Welcome to this video message about human sacrifice in relation to Abraham. People are often horrified to read the story of Abraham and the instruction he received to go and sacrifice his son Isaac. And they think, wow, that must have been a big surprise. Nobody saw that coming. In fact, yes, everyone saw that coming. In primitive culture, sacrificing to the gods was very common. It's a global phenomenon. In pretty much all primitive societies, that human sacrifice would have been practiced by throwing people over cliffs, garroting them, burning them in the fire, or when a ruler would die, that maybe his entourage would also die to, as it were, go with him and serve him in the afterlife. So having a god ask for a human sacrifice, no one would have batted an eyelid at that. They would have expected it. The big surprise was that the sacrifice did not continue to completion. The big sacrifice was that God interrupted the process and said, I'm not that kind of God. I do not want you to go ahead and kill your son. But the steps taken toward the sacrifice involved a very stark set of priorities for Abraham. It's like, God, whatever you ask for, I will give you. You are my God. You are number one in my life. So even if you ask for what's most precious to me, I will sacrifice that for you. And in our contemporary society, we do have a form of sacrifice in the sense of cut flowers. When you give a bunch of flowers to someone, the flowers are cut flowers. They're not potted plants. They're cut flowers. They're going to die. You give them to the person so that they just have pleasure from them because you're saying, you're more important. You matter this much. We give these flowers to you. And so if you've ever thought that flowers is a strange and wonderful present, there's an element of this sacrifice present in this. Now, let's think about what was going on in Abraham's mind. We talked already about the notion of priority. That in his life, he decided to serve God and he was obedient to God's call. And when God's call even asked him to take his darling son and choose God rather than his darling son, he went forward with that choice. So an extraordinary example of a priority being put into practice. But Abraham is also famous for his faith. God had made promises to Abraham saying, through this son, Isaac, you will have many, many descendants. Now, Isaac was probably only, a pre-teen when he went with Abraham to that sacrifice. And so Abraham in that act was exercising faith, believing that God would keep his promise even if it seemed impossible. He believed that God could raise Isaac from the dead if need be. So even though he couldn't see how it was going to work out, he just knew that what God had promised, God was going to do. So there's this extraordinary exercise of faith. And in that respect, Abraham is the father of everyone who believes, and he's given that title. And a third rather deep thing that was happening in this journey of Abraham was that he was entering into the thoughts and feelings of God. Because as we know now, some millennia later, God will also experience the same kind of loss of choosing to sacrifice his son. And Abraham was called the friend of God. And to understand someone else's pain and loss and to experience something similar to that and therefore be able to understand that person is an extraordinary thing. It's an extraordinary privilege and it's an extraordinary level of friendship. And so all of these things were going on in the story of Abraham. And for us, there's personal challenges for us in this story. Personal challenges about priorities. Are we deliberate about our priorities in making choices, even hard choices, rather than choosing the easy path? So Abraham, in the step he took, was not choosing the easy path or even the popular path in terms of how the rest of his family might feel about it. But sometimes we have to make extraordinary choices to decide to do the right thing by setting priorities. And also, in so doing, we exercise faith. Sometimes you're faced with a great dilemma or a great challenge, and by doing the right thing, you think, I can't see how this will work out. Maybe it would be better if I cheated or lied or just found some way to fix this for myself. But like Abraham, we can decide, I will do the right thing and I will believe that God can make it work out for me, even though it seems impossible. And I can't see any way that this will come right if I do the right thing, but we do the right thing anyway. So there's an example of faith first. And there's also the opportunity for us to enter into some sympathy or knowledge of the thoughts and friendship of God, in the sense of God lost his only son. He's not a stranger to pain, to sacrifice, to loss. And so we can recognize that God is not just separated from us in the sense of not wanting to be touched by the feeling of our needs and pains, but he's very much acquainted with our sorrows and pains as well. So a lot of lessons for us there in Abraham. Thank you for joining us.